Good morning. This is day 3. I have a note today. Main thing is gearing up my advisees for calls this weekend on college applications, what we're doing on that, trying to get everything ready. My first class advisees that'll be graduating. We are going to have some form or fashion of graduation ceremony. And for those of you that are going to be graduating after the term, so taking the 6 credits after the term and transferring those back, then we'll make sure that we figure out one for the end of summer as well. So today I want to talk about your future, and I wanted to, this is a funny thing that came up in the paper today. I'm going to just put it up here real quick so you guys can see it. I don't know how many people take the paper anymore. So, looking past that slice of pizza that's going to be delivered by your local pizza shop later today, what are we going to do as we go into fall? Um, Today, as we're thinking about this, you're attending one of the finest college preparatory schools in the country. Even if you're in the junior college, the NMMI was started out as a boarding school for students in New Mexico that couldn't find the education that they needed, traveling from a distance. And college prep is what we have been and remain today. And all of our students are gearing up towards going to college. Now, some of you are going to ask, why college? I want to go to work. I want to do this or that. Maybe less now. The last few years, we've lost out on students going into the economy, which rightfully so, when the job market is strong and you can make better money, go to work. The prediction is that that may not quite be the same in the coming years. Why college becomes a big issue of, the not only where you want your family to be, but where you want to be. There is a limit, going to work in the oil fields because they're paying a ton of money. Fantastic. Your body eventually gives out, and that's a challenging thing to keep up with. It's really necessary, essential, clearly, really important, but something that is difficult to keep up and be a roughneck whenever you're, my age, even, and certainly into your 50s or 60s. So as you think about it, I want you to look at a Georgetown study that was published, and this covered what's called return on investment, ROI. And I'm going to suggest to you, now granted, my degree is in economics, so let me just preface with that. I'm going to suggest to you that college is far less in this day and age about going to that school with that big name. Did you go to Harvard? Well, what is Harvard's ROI? You'll be surprised when you look at the study, because the return on investment for some educations is not what you would expect it to be. So whenever you think about this, I suggest you look at this study. When you're thinking about the institute, you're going to see that of the military schools, aside from the academies are funded by the federal government. So clearly, if you can get into a service academy, go. That education is paid for by the government. However, you do have required service, of course, with those organizations, but incredible schools. We are one of the top prep schools for the academies. They're really great places to go. So if you get into an academy, go for it. But aside from those, out of the civilian schools, we're at the top of the military schools. In the state, we're ranked first in return on investment as far as the traditional 2-year and 4-year schools go. And then 158th nationally out of 4,500 schools. Incredible, really incredible. And so when you think about it, the cost you end up paying to come to NMI is purposefully kept down, especially for in-state students. In the high school, of course, as you know, we cover 100% of need, and in the college, we get really close with almost everyone. But as you're looking at this, you're going to think, okay, what sort of school it would be number one in this list? It is Putnam Westchester Practical Nursing Program. That's the highest 10-year ROI. So what that's going to mean is that they're charging less and you're making more. Now, most of you are not going to be interested in nursing. However, as you look at this list and consider this in light of your college choices, you're going to begin to see that there are certain schools that have a really good return on investment where you're going to be able to make your money back within the first decade of your life. And then all of the benefit of that college education financially is something that propels you forward. And so these things are important. Also takes into account, can you get a job? A degree in underwater basket weaving, fantastic. Hope you had a good experience. I can't imagine that that's going to lead you to a lot of jobs. Now, alternatively, my degree is agricultural and applied economics. I'm in education. I started out in admissions, moved to student support, different things. So this is not going to be something where a college degree, you're going to say, I have this degree and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I'm supposed to be an ag banker, was my idea as a college freshman. Clearly, that's not exactly what happened in life, and it was a great journey, and it has been and continues to be. All right. So really it becomes a question of where you want to go. And so I'm going to challenge all my other faculty and staff out there at the Institute, as well as the regents and our alums, to make a short video about your college experience and the high school to the point that it impacts your college experience so that our students can have a little bit of a glimpse of different takes. Mine is one journey. And there are so many different journeys and so many options in college today that you have lots of things to consider. What I expect to happen out of this is that there are going to be all sorts of online opportunities, which are great for a lot of people. Some people can't, or there are times in your life when you can't go to a traditional college campus and do it the traditional way. Got it. You're going to hear in my story, I have a couple of those. But I'm going to make the point also that when you do have the opportunity to go to a traditional college campus and have that traditional college experience, there's so much. The classroom is incredible. My experience at at Texas Tech in my undergraduate and master's degrees, and at Eastern New Mexico during my first semester, really great experiences in the classroom. Learned so much. I was growing the entire time. Teachers were challenging me on my thought process. There were moments in time in my life that I remember vividly that happened in those classrooms that could not happen online. It's just not possible. And so, as you're thinking about those things, I would, challenge you to consider your option in or your future options in light of all of that. So my family's been in Roosevelt County, New Mexico since for basically little over 100 years. And my parents worked in the sugar industry, so I was born in Minnesota. But it's safe to say that I'm a New Mexican at heart and have so many great friends and experiences from growing up in Portales. Still have great family connections there. So many of the people that had just an incredible impact on my life still call Portales home. So, there's one quick story about growing up in New Mexico that you don't always appreciate, especially when you're from here. My best friend growing up is Hispanic, and we good friends from as far as I can remember. But his last name is Smith, and so we were probably in second grade, and the kid came up to us and asked if we were brothers. Well, clearly this kid's Hispanic. I'm, as you can see, clearly not. Last name Smith, they put two and two together and thought we were. Well, at first, you're a little kid, you want to be honest. No, we're not brothers, whatever. And after the first couple of times that happened, I'm like, yeah, sure, we're brothers, you bet. He's truly one of the best men that I've ever known. Incredible guy with an awesome family. Um, Such a neat place to grow up in this multicultural environment where, we just in New Mexico, we just don't see things the same. Once you go out of state and see how the rest of the country views culture. It's just different growing up here. And so be glad for those of you that came to school here at NIMI or that grew up in New Mexico that you've had that experience. It is unique. I remember as a senior, I applied to several schools in New Mexico and Texas mainly. I had at one point sent out, I wrote all sorts of letters to all sorts of big name schools, and I still have them. And I'd encourage you not to do that. If you have an interest in a school, tell that school that you're interested in them. Find out what the possibility is, because I wrote it off beforehand, much the same as NIMI. I know whenever I was a freshman or sophomore in high school, I asked my mom and dad about the institute, and their automatic answer was too high priced, can't do it, don't want you moving away, all those things. I should have come down and had a visit, because in reality, probably could have worked out because the Institute offers so much financial aid, but not what I did. So I'd encourage you not to follow that. If you've got an interest in a school, if you're thinking about going to school here, there, or yon, make sure you go and check that school out and see what they'll offer. Apply, find out what the financial aid package is, because somebody's saying, oh, we can't afford it, we can't do that. Well, you don't really know until you apply and let their financial aid office kick in and tell you what you're going to owe. So go ahead and move forward with whatever school you're interested in. But I was set pretty much senior year on Texas Tech. And so in August of '94, I loaded up, moved into my dorm room, and then I went back home for a couple of days. And as you can imagine, 101 years in one county, lots of family around. And my two grandmothers, man alive, they they were not very excited about me going the great distance of an hour and a half away to school, which, in retrospect is ridiculous. But at the time, when you're in that position, they clearly have a big impact on you. So ultimately, went over, picked up my stuff, came home, and went to Eastern in the fall. I didn't realize at the time, I thought, simple decision. I didn't realize what impact that was actually going to have on my financial aid, on different bits of the experience that I was having. But they give financial aid a lot of times to students that are either transferring at a certain point, part of a transfer program, or that come as freshmen. So I, enjoyed my experience at Eastern, but living at home, loved my family. That just wasn't working out as well as it could have for me. So I ended up going back to Texas Tech in January, assuming that all of my financial aid would still be in place. Well, clearly that's not the case. Once you say I'm not coming, they reallocate that. So my over the course of 4 year, $40,000 College of Ag scholarship was gone. Asked if there was anything, and they said no. We allocated that to all the kids that came, and you didn't. And then I had also lost a scholarship worth about $8,000 from the Alumni Association. So me deciding not to go to Tech in that first term cost, over the course of my education, not quite $50,000 in scholarship money. When you think about those decisions, please take into account all the bits and pieces, because I never got those sorts of scholarships back again. I did, thankfully, I talked to Marty Grassel, who is the director of admission at Texas Tech, and I got a $1,000 scholarship that waived my out of state at Tech. And so my scholarship award over 4 years would have been $48,000. Instead, it ended up being about $4,000. So as you go through this process, realize that you need to make these decisions carefully, because letting people influence you, and then making changes, and you are a little bit whenever you first came to the institute, think about it, you were a little bit nervous about it, right? I mean, it's a whole new experience, so there's nothing wrong with being nervous, but those decisions have big long-term implications for your life. Can you imagine? Well, you don't know my finances, but imagining that I have, $48,000 less in college debt on graduation, which Texas Tech, luckily, and my family helped out a ton. So my debt was nowhere near that level. But it would have changed the way that I went to college, and it would have changed the ability I had. I worked all through college. My parents thankfully paid for my apartment. I paid for my living expenses, and then we used the scholarships, grants from a low-income family, and the financial aid available to be able to go ahead and make up that difference. So whenever you think about that, think about those carefully. So I had a great time at Tech, incredible advisor, Dr. Graves, lots of awesome faculty, found friends, I plugged in. By the end of the time at Tech, I was on the homecoming committee. Cool deal, I got to drive Mr. and Mrs. Preston Smith, the first governor of Texas from West Texas. to the homecoming parade, set up the pep rally. Also worked with Paige White and Trey Hadaway in new student orientation. Office of Admissions. I worked with Marty Grassel again, who had given me the scholarship earlier. Um, I just built an amazing group of friends. At this point, we've most of us been friends for right at 25 years. And all of these friends from grad school, from undergrad, they showed up in force at my wedding in Kansas City in March, which, if you know Kansas City in March, is not always super duper warm. But, more recently, a couple of years ago when my dad died, they showed up. These friends from my freshman and sophomore years in college showed up the day that that funeral happened, and I didn't know they were coming. And then our other friends from Lubbock, who we go to, ball games with and different things, they came over. These folks that you meet in these in person, and many of the the NMMI alums will actually tell you, "Hey, look, I made my best friends while I was there." So these folks make a big difference in your life, and those connections, those people, really matter. I have my master's from Tech as well. I met a whole new group of folks. And in the graduate program, I also met Dr. Shada, who became my doctoral advisor at Nebraska, again, making those connections. First job, I was hired by Marty Grassel at Texas Tech. I was the Fort Worth rep for Tech for a year and then went back as a special programs administrator at the Office of Admissions before I decided to go to Peace Corps for a short stint. I ended up not staying because the job that they had me doing would have fundamentally changed the culture of the Niven in Vanuatu in the South Pacific from what was uh, a culture of where they shared everything to a capitalist culture. Capitalism works for us, big believer in it. Certainly would not, it would have changed their whole culture. Then I came back and again, and went back to my tech connections. I interviewed at Wyoming and Arizona State, but eventually went to work for Paige White, now Elam, who had gotten married in the interim, at Avila, who I had worked for before at orientation at Tech. And the connection went farther. I lived in her parents' basement, paid them rent because I didn't have a place to live. Her mom suggested I go to the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection for their singles group. So one night I drive over, meet my wife, who had just come back from teaching in Indonesia in a school there. These stories just keep weaving, and whenever you hear about people talking about their experience in college and in life, these organizations make a huge difference. So whenever you're thinking about where you're going, this is important. Um, Now, I have a online or a blended, I guess, certificate in counseling from New Mexico State. Dr. Baldo, awesome advisor. Went back and forth, did some things there and some things here. My doctoral degree was almost entirely online. I had to go to Lincoln for my dissertation proposal, dissertation defense, and then graduation. Um, in short, in those two programs that were online and blended, I don't know anyone. Well, Colonel Martinez went through the Nebraska program with me, but I really don't have any connections to those places or those schools because I was online. I wasn't there. And so, big difference. I have much greater connection at this point to New Mexico military than anywhere else because all of you walking through my door, the alums, the faculty, the staff, the people that really matter, this connection that we have to the Institute is incredible. And this is, again, so unique because you come here at such young ages and you have these friends that help you get through these hard times. You have people that reach out to you whenever you're struggling and help, or they're the ones that call you, when on the day when you're like, okay, I made this big colossal mistake. What am I going to do about this? And sometimes that ends up in us being able to work it out. Sometimes that ends up in students taking a semester off, or potentially a year off and then coming back. In all of those things, I think you remember those people that help you through those times. And that is everyone's job at the Institute, all faculty and staff, clear to the top, even the regents. It's all of our job to make sure that your college and high school experience at the Institute is really rich, and that you have a positive experience. That's what we work every day to do. Not 100% successful, but we feel like we do a really good job ultimately of giving you a great quality education. I just heard from a group of 2008 cadets that just came back for their 10 year, and they're talking about doing a 15 because they had so much fun. So really a cool deal. Um, in short, whenever I was here, I had to do the online and the blended programs. I have a family, I've got kids. I'm working here at the institute. I didn't have any choice to go. I can't drive to Lincoln, Nebraska, for classes 2 or 3 times a week. So in those cases, online is a great opportunity. Online opportunities, if you're in a ship in the Atlantic somewhere defending the country, thank you so much for your service. That's when an online program works. But whenever you're in a place where you can go and you can be part of a college experience, that's really going to be rich for you and provide you with a lot of connections that you'll not find any other way. So, looking back, great friends from high school, undergraduate and graduate at Texas Tech. Lots of great people at Nebraska and New Mexico State. Just not, not the same sorts of connections that you have whenever you're at an on-campus program. So, for my first class advisees, I want to meet with you virtually this weekend. Please call me and set that up, 575-637-4068. We need to talk about where you're headed this fall, what you're doing, and hope that you have a great day today. And you may need to split this video into 2 parts to get it all done.